गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परम ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। So, from today we'll take up the study of this Nirvana Shatkam, meditation verses, a text by Adi Shankaracharya. Actually, in the introduction, Swami Tejamanji says that this text is more for meditation rather than for discussion. Because this Nirvana Shatkam is the direct subjective awareness of this pure self. And Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya's awareness of that self that he has composed in the form of six shlokas, it is also called as Atma Shatkam, because it speaks about the self. So it is his own direct subjective awareness of the absolute bliss, the self-realization. So it has to be meditated upon. And this is a set of 6 verses on the nature of the self. Now, we have been studying the scriptures, no doubt, for so many years together. So as a sadhaka, as a seeker, we have studied several texts, and more or less we have the idea about what is to be sought, what we need to realize. We have been going through these lives. For millions of lives, we have been going through these experiences in the ephemeral world. In the ephemeral world, birth, growth, then youth, old age, disease, death. And in between, of course, so many karmas, some good, some bad, so many experiences, some good, some bad, happy, miserable, and so on. And of course, likes and dislikes, love and hatred, friends and enemies, and so on. This we have been experiencing for lives together. Coming to the spiritual path is not easy. So, those who take to spirituality earnestly are very few in this world. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita also, Bhagwan Sri Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyante. So, only after many lives does a man of knowledge reaches me. Bahunam Janmanam Ante. So, and after many lives of sadhana, people attain the supreme truth, the absolute self, the pure self. That also Bhagwan Sri Krishna says in the 6th chapter. So, Aneka Janma Samsiddhihi Tataha Yati Param Gatim. So, in fact, actually, the 6th chapter is also known as Atma Sanyam Yoga or Dhyana Yoga. So, when it comes to meditation, we need to study this chapter also, 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So, many lives we have lived, and as a seeker also, it takes many lives. Because when we begin to walk the spiritual path also, in just one life it is not possible, because once an urgency comes that I have to follow the spiritual path, but if there are too many other things, obstacles, so it takes some lives to get rid of that. So, because it is not easy to develop the viveka. Viveka has to be developed first. So, after developing the viveka, then only vairagya the real vairagya will come only after viveka, not the smashan vairagya. Without these two qualifications of viveka and vairagya, it is not easy to walk the spiritual path. So, these are the prerequisites for any seeker who wants to take up the spiritual path. So, this is what is important now. In the introduction, of course, Swami Tejamananji has given a very good introduction to this. That is, seekers in the earlier stages of their spiritual journey, of course, can benefit from this. And those who are already on the spiritual path and well advanced, they will also benefit from this. So they can use these verses in their daily meditation. Dhyana abhyasa. So now here, meditation alone is the means to the great realization of this truth. This samadhi is when we transcend the identity with the body, mind, intellect, and the pranas, and so on. So, but of course, we have seen that the embodied, the jiva is of course having too many impurities. The realization itself doesn't take much time as such, but getting rid of the impurities takes a long time, because we have been used to that for lives together. We have been living that way for lives together, and getting rid of that is not easy unless that viveka is there, and with viveka, the vairagya comes, the supreme vairagya comes. It is not that easy. So, then only with viveka vairagya, earnestly when you take to this path, then the statement of the Shruti, Tattvamasi, can help us walk the path. that Tat Pada itself is the Tvam Pada, Tattvamasi, that you are. So, Vairagya again is important. And to get the Vairagya, it is not easy, because of millions of lives of habitual living in the same old rigmarole that we have developed. And to get rid of that, to gain the dispassion, there is no other way but strict spiritual practices are required. Not only that, but adherence to dharma, giving up of all the adharmas. First is the purification itself takes time. Antakaran Shuddhi. Antakaran Shuddhi can happen through Karma Yoga. Everybody does karma. Doing karma, just doing karma is not Karma Yoga. When does karma become yoga? Karma becomes yoga when karma is done through Nishkam Bhava. That is Nishkama karma. If it is done through Nishkama, that is desireless. That is, I am doing this action, but I don't desire the fruits of this action. So Nishkam Bhava is there. Only when Nishkam Bhava comes, then the karma becomes Karma Yoga. Otherwise, everybody does karma every day. That doesn't become karma yoga. So nishkam bhava, when we don't want anything out of that action that we are performing, then it becomes karma yoga. So that will help us in purification of our mind, removing the impurities. What are the general impurities that our minds carry? The kama, krodha, lobha, moha, the desires, anger, greed, delusion, arrogance, jealousy, likes and dislikes, and so on. So these are all the mala that we carry in our antakaran. So that is what needs purification, clearing of that. And cleansing of that is not that easy. We always have desires, some desire or the other. If not this worldly desire, then other worldly desires. Oh, after death, I want to go and enjoy in heaven, Swarga, in other lokas, and so on. So we carry this karma, and of course, the obstacles give rise to anger, krodha. And if our desire is fulfilled and it gave us some kind of joy, pleasure, or happiness, we want to repeat it, then the greed to repeat it increases. So, like that, and then we get deluded also because actually we don't think or we don't use our viveka in fulfilling the desire. Does this desire, fulfillment of desire, give me real happiness? It is not. We have seen this so many times. It is only our imagination that we draw some kind of joy, pleasure, or happiness from the external world. When through Viveka Buddhi, through discrimination, we can do a proper analysis and arrive at this conclusion that there is not an iota of joy, pleasure, or happiness in this Ananta Koti Brahmanda, in this cosmos anywhere. And if some may say that, of course, it may or may not be there, but whenever I'm indulging in some object, I do derive some kind of joy, pleasure, or happiness, even if it is ephemeral, momentary, temporary. So where is it coming from? We have seen that also. It is only our mental projection. When the desire for that object is fulfilled temporarily, our mind becomes desireless. And the desireless state of mind is the cause of happiness, not the opposition of that object itself. So it comes from within because our essential nature itself is of infinite bliss. So that is projected, like the famous example of the dog chewing on the bone and the bone injuring his inner mouth. And then when it starts bleeding, he keeps sucking at it and he feels as if it is coming, the juice is coming from the bone. When it is his own blood, he is sucking. So that is a very common example that is quoted always in Vedantic talks, discourses. So because of that, to get the real Vairagya is very difficult, not so easy. And who bothers to do the analysis with Viveka Buddhi, with discriminative intellect? Nobody is bothered. Of course, in the earlier times, in the ancient times, a lot of time was there because now too many distractions are there. Those days, of course, distractions were less. But then mostly people engaged in farming. And farming was also not easy. It was hard work, no doubt. But then it was again, in many places, it was only seasonal. After that, they have nothing much to do, not taking care of cows and goats and things like that. So they had much time, no doubt. But even then, the desires, the mala, the impurities of the mind, that doesn't go. And now in the modern times, in the 21st century, with so many distractions around us, with new discoveries and inventions in entertainment and things like that, media and all that thing, people absolutely don't have time. You can see people walking on the streets with their attention on their mobile phone. They are going through their mobile phone while they are walking. What is so urgent? That they can't keep their mobile away for some time. So that is the state of affairs that we have come to. So it requires time. It is hard work. It is not easy. Had it been so easy to realize the self, everybody would have become realized masters, but that is not the case. So, of course, as regards the realized master is concerned, for him, no rules apply for him. He is beyond all rules and regulations, beyond all the ashramas. The rules and regulations belonging to the brahmacharya ashram, grihastha ashram, vanaprastha ashram, and sannyasa ashram doesn't apply to a realized master. So he may follow, he may not follow. It doesn't affect him at all. But if you take that as an example, because in this text, Adi Shankaracharya ji also says that there is no sin, no merit, no papam, no punyam, and all that thing. And for a realized master, he need not do any puja, part, any upasana, any rituals or any yajna. So, if a person who new on the spiritual path, if he sees this, he reads that, okay, then I also don't have to do all these things. But those words doesn't belong to a seeker who has just started on the spiritual path. They are describing a realized master. For him, it doesn't matter at all. But a new seeker, a new sadhaka, reading this, he should not come to jump to the conclusion that, okay, this sin and merit doesn't affect me. This yajnas and pilgrimage, that don't affect me. I should not bother about it, all that thing, upasana and all that. That is absolutely wrong. So it is very easy to misunderstand. As I had said earlier also, if we understand, it is very good. If we don't understand also, it will not cause us harm. But if we misunderstand, that is where it will be disastrous. And especially on the path of knowledge or Jnana Yoga or Vedanta. So, and then of course, how how a seeker starts on this path also briefly we'll see. Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. Shravana is the listening to the scriptures. Now what we are doing is listening to the scriptures. We are doing the Shravana sadhana. So at least when we do the Shravana sadhana, first time we hear about the scriptures, about the absolute truth, about the self and things like that. So whatever we had ignorance about it, now, to certain extent, now that has gone. Now we know through the scriptures, through the masters, and so on. We know. So the Shravana sadhana, listening to the scriptures, is the first thing that we need to do. And the listening should be with full attention, because we have not studied the scriptures, if we have not studied it, and we hear a lot about God and creation and heaven and hell, and some talks about Advaita, some talks about Advaita, and so on. And all these things are there. And then so many paths are there to create more confusion, and so many texts are there to create further confusion. So only when listening to the scriptures, we get a clear picture, clear idea about what we are seeking and in which direction we should be heading to. So Shravana sadhana is the first step in Vedanta. Shravana followed by Manana. Manana is the reflection. Because whatever we have heard, Shravana sadhana we have done regarding the scriptures, but then our own direct experience is contradictory to what is said, what is heard when we are listening to the scriptures. There it is said that you are the pure self, but my own subjective experience, my own direct experience is something in this ephemeral world. Sometimes I suffer, sometimes I am happy, sometimes I am miserable, and I am afflicted psychologically also, physically also, and things like that. And here they are talking that I am of the nature of infinite bliss. Where is that bliss? Well, I'm suffering. So whatever we listen to, then a reflection on that, mananam, that is required, what we have heard. So while we were listening, some doubts may arise. When the doubts arise, and then there has to be some way to clear those doubts, some source. So when we are listening to that, doubts arise, and then when we start reflecting on what was heard, slowly, when we start reasoning out, it was said like this, my experience is like that, why it was said like that, how it could be. So this mananam will help us in clearing the doubts to a great extent. And then this is important. And finally, then the contemplation. The third step is nididhyasan. So Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. So Nididhyasanam is the contemplation. Because now, having reflected on what was heard, now there is a firm conviction that, okay, this is what it is. But now we have acquired the knowledge, which is the paroksha jnana. Objectively, we have heard and acquired that knowledge, but now it has to be converted into aparoksha bodha, direct subjective awareness. So then further, first, before we reach that stage, after mananam, nididhyasan is required to firmly abide in this knowledge. And nididhyasana will lead to, the contemplation will lead to the uh, meditation and to samadhi. So, erroneous notion happens in our mind because of aviveka, and of course, because of vairagya is also not there. Because when we are living in the ephemeral existence, our experience in this world is what we take it as real. So whatever it may, the scriptures may tell us, but our direct experience from in living in this world is somewhat contrary to that. And therefore, it sometimes becomes difficult to accept. So, but practice has to be there. This habitual living that we have been doing for so many lives together, that can be removed only by sincere and consistent practice, that is abhyasa. So adhyasa can be removed through abhyasa. So when we consistently practice and maintain the thought about that absolute truth, Brahman, that alone I am, so it will help us get rid of the ignorance. And even this thought will at some point in time will disappear, because when the ego dissolves, then who is there to say that alone I am, when only pure awareness is there? Because when ego dissolves, there is no sense of duality. So when there is no sense of duality, then there is no question of saying I am alone that Brahman. That also is not required. So in spirituality, thinking, speaking, and discussing about the truth itself is also abhyasa. That is also contemplation. See? So, and contemplating about it in solitude is meditation then. That is nididhyasanam. And further, it can be converted into meditation and samadhi. So, if nothing else, even thinking about it constantly, speaking about it, discussing about it, that also is a type of brahmabhyasa. So, and when we do the same thing in solitude, alone, not with someone, some other seekers or sadhakas, but alone, then it is real contemplation. So, then that can lead to meditation and samadhi. The problem is the veiling, the avarana, and the superimposition, the dhyasa. So, these are the obstructions. Because of the veiling, the superimposition has come. Without the veiling, that cannot come. So, these are the obstructions. So this adhyasa can be removed only through abhyasa, constant abhyasa. Abhyasa again has got two meanings. If you translate into English, abhyasa means study. Abhyasa also means practice. So abhyasa has got two meanings, study and practice. So whatever knowledge we acquire, it is not limited to study only, it has to be practiced. It has to be put into practice. Because this is Vedantic philosophy, Vedantic teachings, Vedantic principles are practical philosophy, not impractical things. No, it doesn't talk about something that is impractical. So here in this Nirvana Shatkam, Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya ji reveals his own subjective realization, awareness of that absolute truth. And we can also benefit by study of this sublime text, Nirvana Shatkam. So it will be also a reality for us, as now Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya ji has composed this after his own realization. So we can also do that, but for a seeker to do that, we have to strictly observe the dharma. So in our early stages, of course, these efforts are very much required. And then later on, it becomes a habit to us. It is not a chore or a tedious thing. So the one who has realized, of course, he adheres to dharma. Even though if he doesn't follow any dharma, it doesn't make any difference to him. So once we have elevated ourselves to a higher level, then no one will go back to the dirt that he has come from. Like if an elephant has taken bath, if he goes and rolls in the dust again, then that elephant is stupid. So once we have cleansed ourselves, we don't go back to the same old rigmarole, same old muller and dirty ourselves again. So that is important. Now this particular text has got 6 verses. In these 6 verses, in the first 5 verses, Adi Shankaracharya ji negates all that which I am not. And in the last verse, he asserts what he is. So this negation and assertion. So, though I am of the nature of this eternal truth, that is Sat Swarupa, but of course, I see people dying, getting born, then grow, and then youth, middle age, old age, disease, and death. So this is happening there, though we are Sat Swarupa. So this we see around us also. And then we are Chit Swarupa, pure knowledge, absolute. And yet we are ignorant of so many things. That also bothers us. And we are of Ananda Swarupa. And then we feel so many times miserable or in sorrow or in pain and so on. So this negation and assertion. So the question should come that what am I bound by, which is causing all this? So when this question comes, what binds me? What is binding me is the karma bandhana, the karmic bondage. Karmas that we have performed for millions of lives together. And because of those karmic bondage, we again and again take form. And then we have to pay the karmic debts also. So all those with whom we have a karmic bondage, they will come in our life, either friends or enemies, relatives, close relatives, neighbors, colleagues, and so on. And we have to learn something from them. We have to give something to them, accept something and things like that. So because of this continuous karmic bondage, And then we keep forging new bondages. In every life, we keep forging new bondages instead of exhausting the previous one and not creating new bondage, karmic bandhana, but we keep creating new karmic bondages. And then again and again, we commit the same mistake and get into the same dirt again and again for lives together. This is what is happening. So, therefore, this karmic bondage comes, it will not come if there is no karta bhokta bhava. Because of karta bhokta bhava only, this karmic bondage comes. I have done this. I am so and so. This is mine. This is not mine. I have done this. I have not done that. And when this karta bhav comes, then the bhokta bhav will be there. So I enjoy, I suffer, and so on. I'm experiencing good, I'm experiencing bad, I'm experiencing happiness and sorrow, and so on. So all the relationships also form due to this karmic bondage, and that will continue. And similarly, of course, in every life, at every station, then we have this purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. That also binds us. Dharma, artha, and kama. Because moksha, purushartha, rarely people go into that. All limited to artha and kama mostly, and some people a little bit about dharma, but nobody bothers about moksha, purushartha. That is the last priority in life. So, negation of anatma, the not self, and all that their qualities and properties and everything, that is with which we actually identify. Anatma only we identify and suffer. So that negation, that has to be constantly there. And why? With the proper reasoning also. Not just like I am not this, I am not that, I am not this and all that thing. Chanting like a parrot will not help. It has to have proper reasonings. Why? The reason has to be there. So whatever it is, then I am none of these. I cannot be described, because when I am none of this, how will we describe that entity? No form, no color, no quality, nothing. And the upadis, the superimposition of the body, the prana, the sense organs, the organs of action, the mind, the intellect, when I'm none of these, how am I? How will I describe myself? What am I then? So that becomes difficult when I'm none of these. So neither the gross body, nor the subtle body, nor the causal body, none of this. So actually in this text also, Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya ji, the very first shloka, he starts with negation of subtle body instead of gross body. Because subtle body expresses to the gross body, and the latter experiences everything through the former, that is the subtle body. So in the gross body, which is either asleep or dead, there can be no experience, no sorrow, no joy, nothing like that. So it is basically the subtle body that is expressing through the gross body. So this, Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya ji negates the subtle body in the very beginning of this text. So it is in the intellect, in the mind, in the memory, we are identified with that, with the ego. And all our problems begin from there. So if you are not identified with that, then there is no problem. With this small introduction to this text, we will begin the first verse. In the first verse is the negation of the subtle body and the subtle elements which form the subtle body. So what is the first shloka? Mano buddhya hankara chittani naham न च क्षोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योम भूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानंद रूपः शिवोहम शिवोहम. मन बुद्धि अहंकार चित्तानि न अहम न च श्रोत्र जिह्वे न च घ्राण नेत्रे न च व्योम भूहि भूमि न तेजः न वायुः चिदानंद रूपः शिव अहम शिव अहम. So mind, mana, mind, buddhi, the intellect, ahankara, the ego, chittani, the memory, na aham, not I, na cha shotra jivve, neither the ears nor the tongue, na cha ghrana netre, neither the nose nor the eyes, na cha vyoma bhumihi, neither the space nor the earth nor fire nor air. Now here न च श्रोत्र जिह्वे न च घ्राण नेत्रे, that includes all the five jnanendriyas, and न च व्योम भूमि न तेजो न vayu, that includes all the panchamahabhuta. So chid ananda rupa, your consciousness bliss, that is what the swarupa is. Shiva aham, Shiva means all that is auspicious is Shiva. Shiva, we give a form and worship Shiva, Lord Shiva. But Shiva itself means everything that is auspicious. So now, when we begin with Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, this is the Antakaran Chatushtaya. Now let us focus on this Ahankara first. Because without Ahankara, then there is nothing. Ego is the root cause of all our problem. If there is no ego, there is no problem. I had said this earlier also. There are 8 billion people on earth, and there are so many conflicts going on in different parts of the earth globally, then internally within the countries also, within the states, within the districts and towns and villages, and within the homes also. Some of the other conflicts are going on, some fight, some quarrel, some things are going on. By some trick, if the ego of 8 billion people are dissolved overnight, what would happen? There will be absolutely no conflict, nothing. People will just go move around, remaining in their own self, because without the ego, they are the pure self. They'll move around, there will be no fight, no quarrels, no hatred, nothing, absolutely nothing. No relationships, nothing. When ego is not there, what relationship? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Suddenly there is calm and quiet. No wars, all have suddenly stopped. No conflicts, no fights. Everything stops. If we have to see how ego creates problem, and when there is no ego, there is no problem. I may have given this example earlier also. A very good example is of a long distance train. When it is starting from one particular point, of course, those who have got reservations, they will get into the reserved compartment and their seats are reserved. But there is a couple of uh, general compartment or unreserved compartment, where those who don't have reservation, they simply buy the ticket and they enter those compartments. So generally, if you find wherever the train is starting from, almost by the time the train reaches the platform, the unreserved compartments are already packed. And then the one who is standing at the door, he doesn't allow the other person to enter from the platform inside. But somehow if the other person enters, then he will stand at the door and he will not allow others to enter. And then there is a lot of quarrel and shouting going on inside that compartment. Somebody says, I put my handkerchief through the window. That is my seat. But then there is no handkerchief because it flew away somewhere else. So something like that going on. And then somebody is putting his bag on somebody's foot and things like that. A quarrel and fight is going on, shouting. And after some time, the train starts moving. So, as when we are filling some grains in a bottle, when we keep shaking it, more we can accommodate in that. So it will all start settling. Similarly, when the train starts moving slowly, people will start settling down wherever they are. So, and then after that, then they'll feel hungry, and then they'll remove their food boxes, dinner, and then everybody will have their dinner belly full, and then they are sleepy. So they have to find a place. Those who are on the seat, they'll sleep there. Those who are don't have between the seats, under the seat, in the passage, wherever they find some space, they have to sleep. And once the whole compartment is fast asleep, and if you view that compartment, whatever few hours ago there was some fight, some quarrel, some shouting going on, now absolute silence. Everybody is fast asleep, and there is absolutely no problem. Who is sleeping where and in what position and all that thing. Somebody's leg may be on somebody else's leg, somebody's finger may be in somebody's mouth. It doesn't matter. Everything is fine. Because in the deep sleep state, that ego is not there. So there is absolutely no problem. When it starts becoming morning and slowly when people start waking up, when the ego manifests and starts identifying with the body, then again the fight begins. How dare you put your leg on my leg? How dare your finger came in my mouth? And so on, it will go on. But as long as they were fast asleep, temporarily the ego was dormant. It was absorbed in source. It was dormant, so to say. And therefore, no problem with anyone. As soon as the ego starts manifesting, then the problem begin again. So the ego is the root cause of problem. In the waking plane of consciousness, we have problems. In the dream state also we have problems, good and bad dreams we get. In waking plane, we have good and bad experiences. But as soon as we enter into the deep sleep state, nothing touches us. Then we are in that blissful state, and when we wake up, we say, I didn't know anything, but I enjoyed it. So this ahankara, ego is the root cause of the problem. In the Bible, in the Christian Bible, they talk about something called as original sin. Now, most of the Christians, they consider this so-called original sin as that Adam, who was, according to them, was the first human created by God, and he was in Garden of Eden with Eve, and there was a tree of whose fruits he was forbidden to eat. And then the story goes that he ate that fruit offered by Eve, tempted by devil in the form of a snake was on the tree. And then because of that, he was driven out of Eden, the Garden of Eden, and then he has to suffer in this earthly life. So that they call it as the original sin. Because of that, all human beings are suffering because of the original sin committed by Adam eating that forbidden fruit. But Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi also talks about this original sin, and he says that the original sin is forgetting our own real self. The original sin is the ignorance of our own real self. This is the original sin and nothing else. So get rid of that ignorance of the self. And that's all that is required. Because of that ignorance of the self, that is the original sin. And then everything else has happened. And therefore, this ego has also propped up nicely. And because of this ego, we keep on suffering. This ego is the culprit, and that which appears in its own absence. This ego. So, this is the original sin, ahankara. If the ahankara is not there, then it doesn't matter whether mana, buddhi, chitta is there, the body is there, the sense organs are there, the organs of actions are there. Let it be. Who cares? If the ahankara is not there, that to identify with these instruments, then there is no problem. And therefore, this original sin of ignorance of the self or unawareness of the self or forgetting the self, the our real self. So therefore, that is also called, Vedanta also, the body is also described in three ways: the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. The causal body is the cause of the subtle and the gross body. And what is this causal body? Causal body is nothing but ignorance of the self. Had that ignorance of the self not happened, then subtle and gross body would not have manifested in the first place. So that is the original sin. Not knowing our real self, that is the cause of subtle and gross body. So had that not happened, then this mana, buddhi, chitta and ahankar wouldn't have been there. So this ahankar causes all the problem. Our practical experience of waking plane of consciousness, dream state of consciousness, and deep sleep state of consciousness also proves that as long as we are in the deep sleep state of consciousness, we have absolutely no problem. Maybe in our waking plane of consciousness, we must have experienced some deep sorrow or some disturbing experience and things like that. In the dream state also. But none of those experiences of the waking plane or the dream state touches us in the deep sleep state. Why is it so? The three states are there. In the waking plane, we suffer. In the dream state also, we suffer. But when it comes to deep sleep state, then we are immune to all the sufferings, as long as we are in the deep sleep state. The only difference is that ego, which is very active in the waking and the dream state, is temporarily absent, so to say, in the deep sleep state. So we don't have any problem. As soon as it manifests when you wake up, then all our problems will be gone. Oh, I've got this sorrow, this misery, this loss I had yesterday, and now how will I make it up and all that thing. So this is the root cause of everything. The ego is the root cause of everything. Unless we dissolve the ego, that itself is realization. So though ego is absent in the deep sleep state, that doesn't mean that we are absent or temporarily we cease to exist. No. So this causal body, this ignorance, which has created this ego and the subtle body and the gross body and all that thing, we are very much present in the deep sleep state also, even though the ego is absent. And therefore, what are we? Who am I? That one, in the waking plane of consciousness, I am there without being a waker. I am in the dream state of consciousness without being a dreamer. I am in the deep sleep state of consciousness without being a deep sleeper. And I am in samadhi without being the one who gets in and out of samadhi. That is what I am. So that is not the ego, because ego is absent in the deep sleep state. But I am very much present in the deep sleep state. Therefore, the experience of deep sleep state is described when you wake up. I didn't know anything, but I enjoyed it. Good sleep, I enjoyed it. What did we enjoy? What did you enjoy? Did you enjoy anything from this world? Anything beautiful you saw? Anything fragrant you smelled or tasted? Or some pleasurable touch? Or something beautiful heard? No. So without indulging in any objects of this world, as soon as I wake up from the deep sleep state, I say, oh, I didn't know anything, but I enjoyed it. But that doesn't mean that I was temporarily absent there. So our pure self is there in all the three planes of consciousness, without which the three planes of consciousness actually cannot exist, because that pure self is a substratum of the three planes of consciousness and samadhi as well, and beyond that. So when it comes to the subtle body, because of this causal body called the ignorance, the subtle body has manifested out of that. Therefore, ignorance is called as the cause of the subtle body. So causal body. So ignorance is called the causal body. Now, ignorance also is spoken of in different ways. Ignorance itself is ego. Ignorance is also called as Maya. What is Maya? Yama samaya. That which is not is Maya. So it appears in its own absence, as the mirage water appears in its own absence, as in insufficient light, the snake appears in its own absence on the rope, where the rope is there. So this Maya, ignorance or ego, they are not there in reality. It is not there in Brahman. So when Maya is brought into, because there are certain things to explain certain things, certain factors are brought into that. So Maya is just to give an explanation of something which otherwise will have no explanation as such until the realization happens. So like sometimes some places it is used and then it is discarded. Like during monsoon time when the water is not very clear, so they put alum in that. So it forms a thin layer on the surface of the water and it takes along with that all the dirt it will take down. And then the pure water we get. So when it takes down and then that whatever is left at the bottom, that is thrown away. So that is that alum which was used to do this, that is also thrown away along with the dirt. So temporarily to explain something, this Maya is brought into the picture and then it is discarded, this Maya. So Maya is actually nothing. Yamasa Maya, that which is not there, it is Maya. So this needs to be understood very clearly. Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. So ego is common. Ego gets identified with the intellect, mind, and chitta. There are two words, chit and chitta. Chit is consciousness and chitta is the memory. So one should not mix these two words. Chit is different and chitta is different. Chitta is only memory, whereas chit is pure consciousness. So now, when that is identified, ego is identified. Ego is common in this Antakaran Chatushtay. Ego is common with the Mana, Buddhi and Chitta. So when identified with the mind, mind is of the nature of Sankalpa Vikalpa. To do or not to do, to go or not to go, and so on. That is Sankalpa Vikalpa. Mind also is where the feelings, emotions, and sentiments takes place. So that is when there is no identification of the mind, then the modification of the mind doesn't affect us. Then intellect is where we come to a firm decision, where all the thoughts are, and we come to a firm decision. So that is intellect. So ego identified with the intellect comes to a firm decision. If ego is not identified with the intellect, then the modifications of the intellect don't affect us. And chitta is the memory of past events and experiences that is stored. And then when it is required, when it is needed, we recall from that. So ego identified with this chitta or memory help us to go into our past events and experiences from where we draw the knowledge from that, what we have experienced, and the lessons that we have learned from those experiences and events, so on. So, without the ego identifying with these three entities, their modifications do not affect us. So, mana, buddhi, ahankara, chittani na aham. So now, Adi Shankaracharya ji in the very first shloka says that I am neither the mind, nor the intellect, nor the memory, nor this ego. None of them I am. Of course, he's talking from his own direct subjective awareness of the absolute truth. Then this is the antakarana, and then it is followed by the five sense organs, the ears, the nose, eyes, tongue, and skin. They are the five sense organs through which the mind leaks out and then acquires the knowledge of five sensory perceptions. And then the intellect takes the decision on that. These five sense organs in itself, even if they are active, they are capable of, if the mind is not connected with that, those five sense organs, then it cannot perceive. The perception doesn't happen. Suppose we are looking into the street, but we are engrossed in some deep thinking, something we are thinking, and then somebody known to us also passes by from front. But we are so lost in our thoughts, though our eyes are open, wide open, we are lost in our thoughts. And then what happens is that we do as if that person doesn't exist. And when that person says that I passed from your front, you were sitting there and watching, but you didn't recognize me. That was because the mind was not connected with the eyes. Mind was engrossed in some thinking. So though it was open and looking out, and mind is the eyes were capable of, it has got capacity to see also, but because the mind was not connected with the eyes, I didn't see. Sometimes somebody is reading a novel and very exciting part is there and is so engrossed in that reading, and somebody calls his name and it is as if he didn't hear it. He doesn't hear because he's so engrossed there. His mind is not connected with the ears, but with the eyes that is reading the part which is so exciting, that novel. So when a couple of times the other person calls, then he comes and tells, hey, I've been calling you. Where are you? Oh, it was so interesting. I was just lost into that. I didn't hear. It doesn't mean that he suddenly lost his hearing capacity. No. So mind has to be connected with the sense organs, even though the sense organs are capable of observing, perceiving, but without the mind connected to that, the knowledge is not gained, the perception is not gained. So mind has to be connected with the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, and of course the skin. Five sensory perceptions and five types of objects. That is where it will go. And five types of objects only will try to gain some kind of what you call joy, pleasure, or happiness. Fortunately for us, nature has given us only five sense organs. And that too, from that five sense organs also withdrawal is so difficult. If we had had 100 sense organs, what would have happened? Then we should have forgotten about coming on the spiritual path and withdrawing ourselves from the sensory world. With the five sense organs, it is becoming so difficult for people to withdraw from the outside world. What to talk about 100 sense organs? So good. So the mind connected with the sense organs will perceive and acquire that, and then the intellect will take the decision. And now the five elements, the space, air, Akash, Vayu, then Agni, Jala, and Prithvi. The five elements. And then the Tanmatras, the subtler aspect of these five elements. This we have also studied in Atma Bodha. It comes in Vivek Chudamani also, in Tattva Bodha also. So the subtler aspects of these five elements, gross element, that has formed this subtle body. The Tanmatras it is called as. So that has become the subtle body that comprises of these sense organs as well as the Antakaran, Chatushta, Mana, Buddhi, and Chitta. That also comes into that only. So from the five elements, five gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta. And then, of course, from this Pancha Mahabhuta, the gross aspect of the Pancha Mahabhuta goes into the formation of the gross physical body. So here, then, of course, Adi Shankaracharya ji says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So in the first three lines, he negates the subtle body completely. And the Tanmatras, the five elements from which the Tanmatras have come, he negates all that. And then he says, then what I am? Chidananda Rupaha. Chid, that is pure awareness. Ananda, bliss. So pure blissful awareness. When it is said pure awareness means what? This awareness is objectless and thoughtful. Otherwise, when you talk about awareness or bodha, consciousness or bodha, conscious of what? Aware of what? Where there is nothing. Objectless and thought-free awareness, Chidananda, and bliss, infinite bliss, Shivoham, Shivoham, auspicious, the most auspicious. So we'll conclude today with this verse and we'll take up the next verse in our next session. Now, if anybody has got any questions.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om, yes.
This Atma Shatakam, Swamiji, I must have heard not less than 300 to 400 times. But today, even one shlok, you have dug up the meaning from a Vedantic point of view is so beautiful, Swamiji. As a matter of fact, for meditation, if we remember the main contents, main points that you explained, is enough to go into the straight into the meditation, Swamiji. Now, particularly, Swamiji, you said about in the deep sleep, the mind goes back, becomes dormant, or as I understand, it goes back to its source. And on waking up, it comes out of the its source and manifests as the waking mind, what we call. Then is it, Swamiji, the whole sadhana is to make this mind not inactive, but what do you call, dissolve into nothingness, Swamiji?
No, you don't have to do anything to the mind. Once the ego is dissolved, then what does it matter whether the mind is there, intellect is there, body is there, sense organs are there, organs of actions are there, it doesn't matter. It is just the question of the ego which identifies with this mind. When the ego is not there, nothing to identify with this, what does it matter then?
But does rituals and all, they help to dissolve the mind?
Of course, whatever practices or study or practice that needs to be done over a period of time on the spiritual path to weaken and dissolve this ego. Because that is the goal. Once the ego is dissolved, you are into your own real self. That's it. Because of the ego, which identifies with this body, mind, intellect equipment, we are so identified with this that I am so and so, and I am the father of so and so, husband or son or sister or brother or whatever it may be. And then whatever the other problems because of these relationships and things like that, and all that thing is there because of this ego only. If that ego is not there, then there is nothing to identify with, no relationship, no karta bhokta bhava. Then whatever happens, it is all spontaneous and no issue with anybody. No quarrels, no shouting, no fights, No conflicts, nothing, absolutely nothing. It is the ego that dictates everything. Because of ego, everything is happening. He did like that, I will do much better. Or if he has done this, I will take a revenge. Why this is happening? Only because of ego. If ego is not there, everybody will be in their own self, nicely sitting there. So we don't have to do anything to the mind. The focus should be to weaken and dissolve the ego that identifies with the mind. Let it be as it is. Let the body be as it is. We don't have to kill the body to realize the self. No, let it be. But the one which is identifying with the body, we have to dissolve that. That's all that is required. So therefore, after realization also, great masters, they continued to live. So, but then it didn't matter to them. So,
So, so Swamiji, ego has risen because of the lack of knowledge
yeah.
about my true self.
Hmm.
So gain subjective knowledge of the self
Hmm.
by meditation, by different sadhanas,
Hmm.
particularly mainly as far as we are concerned, by Shravana Manan and Nididhyasan,
Hmm.
isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Continuous thinking, talking, discussing about this Brahma Tattva, the
Hmm,
absolute self,
hmm,
and then contemplating on that in solitude also,
hmm,
in thinking about it, whether with other seekers or alone, or contemplating on that or meditating on that, continuously that alone.
hmm,
Every time, whenever we have some time at our disposal, it has to go back to ourself,
hmm,
and then contemplation should go on.
hmm,
So this is what it is. And we have got so many texts we have done,
hmm,
and so many the verses are there in that which will help us in this path.
hmm,
And then we have also done why we are not this body. We have taken 14 reasons, and
hmm,
so far nobody has come up with the 15th reason anyway.
hmm,
So many of those 14 reasons will apply to the organs of action, sense organs, the pranas, the mind, as well as to the intellect.
hmm,
Many of them, though it is exclusively specifically for the gross physical body, but some of those reasons will be applicable to others also. Why we cannot be the organs of actions or sense organs or the pranas or the mind and its contents called the feelings, emotions, and sentiments, or the intellect and its contents called the thoughts. Some of those reasons will be applicable to these also.
hmm.
So these pancha koshas, none of these pancha koshas I am them. So continuous contemplation is required.
Thank you very much, Swamiji.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Yogi Bhai, Prakash?
Oh,
No,
quite.
fine. I'm fine.
It's same here. Quite clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. So then,
Well,
shall we
we'll,
conclude today's
yeah,
session?
we'll call it a day.
Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Harihi